Should I buy the Beatles 1964 mono capital box? That was what I was thinking earlier today when I saw it come online on some of my favorite websites to buy vinyl on. Should I subscribe to buy this box? And my first response was, wow, Beatles mono. And somewhere I read original master tapes. What are they talking about? Well, I had to temper my enthusiasm quite early because what are we talking about? Well, the release is as follows. We are getting a box set with the records Meet the Beatles Second Album, A Hard Day's Night, Something New, Beatles Story, which is a two-set interview disc, Beatles 65, and Early Beatles. These are the way the Beatles were released for the first time in the USA. And the moment I saw that the box set was actually this, my enthusiasm was completely gone. As you may know, the Beatles mono box, as the one from 2014, is a treasured collector's item because it contains the Beatles mono albums the way they were released in Europe and originally from the UK from the original master tapes. Now, the word master tapes in this regard is interesting because Beatles mono master tape, that's worth a lot of money. And that's what a lot of collectors are after. And also, that's what makes me enthusiastic because I want Beatles from the original mono masters. But what are these Capitol mono album masters? Well, first of all, let's talk about what these releases actually were. Capitol was initially not so interested in releasing the Beatles. I believe they only released them because there was a deal with EMI and they could make money out of it. Now, Capitol, of course, is a label or brand that has gorgeous studios and made some of the most brilliant sounding pressings and recordings. But these US titles are not known for that. And why are they not known for that? Because they simply are not. The first thing that Capitol did was they took the Beatles albums and they omitted three or more songs from these albums so they could compile extra albums so they could make more money. Back in the day, this infuriated the Beatles, who always wanted good quality for good value for their money. And that's not the only thing. So not only is the concept behind these albums to just grab money, they did not do a good job mastering. What Capitol asked from EMI were not the original master tapes per se. They asked for the stereo mixes. So we're not getting mono master tapes, or at least not the way you might think it are. First of all, there's a difference between mono and stereo because all of the Beatles albums were mixed in different sessions on mono and stereo, and you had to build these mixes. Both took a lot of time, but the mono mixes, up until the point of the White Album, they gave more time to the mono mixes. So a lot of Beatle fans prefer the mono ones. I like to have them both because sometimes the stereo ones contain something very interesting. But in a lot of cases, yeah, the mono just sounds fuller and more interesting. But Capitol asked for the stereo mixes, and they made their own fold downs from these stereo mixes into new master tapes. Now, these are not master tapes that immediately come from a first generation, or they come from a first generation, but there's copying involved. So there is more noise, the quality is less, and then there is reverb added. It's fake mono from a stereo mix. So generally, among vinyl collectors who are in it for the audio quality, these US pressings are uninteresting. I have one of these records in an original US pressing, never play it. These are not the titles or the sound quality that are interesting if you want to experience the Beatles in the best way. Now, and that makes it so fascinating because on their website, on the announcement, they proudly say the following: the original master tapes uh, were used with full analog equipment and with a constant reference to the original pressings. Now, the master tapes of these albums, which already had a process of coming from other master tapes, being altered, and if you're going to compare them to generally known crappy pressings, what are you doing? Also, they're not putting their best mastering engineer on it. Kevin Reeves is not known as an interesting mastering engineer. It's not Kevin Gray. It's not Bernie Grundman. It's not Bob Ludwig. It's not Chris Bellman. These are not the big guns. These are not the interesting titles. This is not going to be an audiophile release. So, getting back to the question, should I buy this box? Well, over here in Europe, you can already pay up forward for about 280 euros. That's a lot of money. As a matter of fact, that is more money than what the original mono box set, 2014 mono box set, went for, which contained the first album up until the White Album and another 3 record set added onto it. I mean, that was value for your money. This is more expensive and most likely not gonna be sound wise anything interesting. So why should you buy one? Well, honestly, I'm not buying it. I'm not interested, and this is one of the most disappointing releases from the Beatles that I've seen. The only reason I can imagine why you would want one is out of physical nostalgia. The idea that if you grew up in the 60s or the 70s and these track lists, these covers, these pressings were the way you fell in love with them, and you want to experience that element of nostalgia in a brand new way without pops or clicks, then this might be interesting for you. Also, if you have a lot of money, because for this amount of money, you could go out and buy British stampers, just British stampers of these albums, later British stampers of these albums. I think you could come a very far way in experiencing the Beatles in full quality. I actually done a video about good alternatives for the Beatles mono box with older pressings, cheaper pressings, because the 2014 mono box is pretty expensive. And in that video, I thought that we're never gonna see a mono box like that again, especially because the value of these records separately, and they want to spread it out in more box sets to earn them a lot more money. And I'm afraid that my suspicion with this 1964 mono box is rather true. They are making a lot more money with mono releases that do not go to the core of what was fascinating about the 2014 box. I'm really let down also because I was so thrilled when 1 or 2 years ago we got this Beatles revolver box set. It was already expensive, about $200, but it contained a very good stereo mix. It contained some very good extras, and most of all, sound quality wise, the mono pressing they had on that one was even better than the 2014 one. I mean, together with the original pressing, that was my favorite pressing. So I thought, sound quality wise, they might make some interesting choices. But this release, this is the opposite. So my conclusion is, it's very hard to predict what they're gonna do, what they're gonna give the fans. But this, for me, is not the kind of release that I'm into. So my advice, if you're into audio quality, sound quality, don't go for it. If you're in for nostalgia, if you're in for American nostalgia, yeah, give it a shot. So I'm curious, what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are you going to buy this? Well, leave a comment below and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.